professionals who have been taking care of the mission that everybody around the world should be connected with the experts and various professionals to co-learn and co-create the entire HR ecosystem. We have Nidhi with us, who's going to be the co-host, and she'll be taking over from here. Thank you so much. Nidhi, you'll have to unmute. Nidhi, you'll have to unmute.
Yeah, got it. Thanks, Natasha. All right, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nidhi Vinod. I currently head Learning and Organizational Development for Lee Hecht Harrison, and I shall be your host this afternoon. Okay, Jack Welch, as I was reading a couple of days ago, we all know him, the former chairman and chief executive of GE. He knew better than most of us how change can affect a business. In GE's annual report at the turn of the millennium, he wrote, and I quote, "When the rate of change on the outside exceeds the rate of change on the inside, the end is near." It's an observation that seems even more pertinent now than it did then. For example, when Mr. Welch made that remark, there were no smartphones. Mark Zuckerberg was just another high school student, and Corona was a name we associate with a popular beer. And today, VUCA has arrived, and how? Just when the fourth industrial revolution had begun disrupting our industries, climate change had become a serious risk to supply chains, and political turmoil was beginning to become a part of our everyday life, we as people, organization, and industries are experiencing a new threat, COVID-19. And the rate of change on the outside and the rate of change on the inside are competing at breakneck speed, making most of us feel that we're on a roller coaster that just wouldn't stop. And while none of us know yet how and when we will emerge on the other side into the new normal, this afternoon we have with us 3 experts who shall be sharing with us anticipated changes in the workplace at India Inc. with regards to technology, the future of workplace agility, and then we shall round that up by getting an insider's view on managing our mental health and well-being in the new workplace. So, once again, welcome everybody to the webinar on understanding lessons for future for post-work COVID-19. Just a few logistics pointers before we begin. Your microphones are on mute to minimize background noise. We should encourage you to post your questions to the speaker in the Q&A. We shall be addressing questions towards the end of every section. All right then, so without further ado, allow me to welcome Anil D'Souza, founder and CEO, Simpliance Technologies Private Limited. Good afternoon, Anil. Anil started his journey with the Indian Navy as a lieutenant commander, surface warfare. He moved to corporate after his master's from IIM Bangalore and has spent 7 years with various global organizations in the HR leadership role. His passion for technology moved him to an entrepreneurial journey in 2014. And since then, he's been working extensively to bring technology as a primary driving factor to enable businesses to meet their goals. What a pertinent time to have Anil with us this afternoon. Anil, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Nidhi. Thank you so much. Natasha, thank you for putting all of this together. And I know there was a couple of glitches in the beginning, and very good question. And you put me on technology. It always reminds me of technology can fail anytime, right? I've had a lot of experience in implementing technology many times, and then all the time you'll find some very silly reason that for which tech will not work, right? Luckily, I was able to figure that out and come into the session much earlier, because probably I'm a tech guy and I know what goes wrong. So I'll share you. I think I've got about 30 minutes, but we're already about 20 minutes down. But I will try and keep it short. Most of the content on tech is always available online. You can always read up and stuff like that. I'll probably speak more on experience, right, rather than showing you a lot of content, right. I'm also going to share my screen, and probably let me know when you guys can see it. Can you all see my screen? I think you should be able to see my screen. Right.
Yes, we can.
Thanks, Nidhi. Great. So quick thing on, I've been, like Nidhi mentioned, I've been in the Navy. I've been with Nokia when Nokia was one of the best companies to work for. And then I've been with an Indian company called Microland, heading their global tech. And then I was with a Swiss company called Syngenta, managing their global shared service center based in Pune. And seeing all of this, I realized that HR tech is not that easy, right? Although everyone would want to be have good systems in your company, but it's very difficult to actually crack it, right? And ensure that you have a good tech running which actually works for business. And that's one of the reason I've kind of stepped out. Today Simpliance is India's largest digital platform, right, for compliance tech, right? So that is one of the things that I picked up as an entrepreneur, because I realized that there were too many people in, let's say, a talent management, talent acquisition, or HR ops for that matter in tech, and then realized that there was no one doing anything about compliance, and that's how we went into HR compliance tech, and we've done really well. We have close to about 700 companies on the platform, and right from your Googles, Amazons, Reliance, all of them use Simpliance, right? So that's how I have made the entire tech work for me and for my corporates. But as a quick thing, before I even I've got about 8 slides in this, right? Very simple slides. But before I get into tech and tell you about my experience, right? Everyone will have their own experience. I think what is most important is everything will not work for everyone, right? So I've been in different organizations, right? I've been in the Navy, where we had tech in 20 years back, which was tracking ships. The GPS tech that we are using today was there in the military 20 years back, right? We were tracking ships across the country, I mean across the world, right? That's the kind of tech that I have been used to. Then with Nokia, I've seen very, very global tech being implemented for HR. Then I've seen in Microland, Indian product being used, and in another Swiss company, we developed global system to develop. So everything may not work for everyone. Now I'm part of a startup. We use a different tech, right? I may not use the high ends of SAPs and Oracles of the world today, but I use tech what works, right? For a startup like us, we're about 70 people now, so that's what works. So you'll be very careful about what I say. Please see what works for you. I think most important thing in any tech, or what tech is going to happen, is, does it work for you, right? Everything doesn't work for everyone. So post my time in Syngenta, I also did some consulting in the Middle East, and just by spending money, tech will not work. I've been consultant to a very large billion-dollar company which was trying to implement SAP, and they almost paid about 20 million of US dollars to get that implemented, and it was a big failure, right? So I think money will not implement tech, right? And all of that. So I think you'll be very careful of what I say. So I may use a lot of terms, may work, may not work, but I think what works for all of us is the people behind the tech, right? So while I talk about big things, and I may talk about some big big terminologies in tech, but I think the people behind it is what makes the tech work, and tech by itself will not work, right? So that's one important piece of it. Although I'm a tech leader, we've implemented lots of tech, we've implemented AI, we've implemented RPA. I know personally how difficult it is to get that done. It's very easy to see, but people talking about artificial intelligence, people talking about machine learning, people talking about RPA, robotic. It's all very nice terms to use, but it's actually a lot of hard work, right? It doesn't happen by itself. So I think, so that's where I will begin with. And with all of this COVID happening, I think it's just increasing the pace of automation that people will actually kind of use, right? So one of the things I'm seeing mostly, and what's going to happen with a lot of HR tech, is a lot of AI and RPA will come in. Now, when I say AI and RPA, it's not that it's going to happen overnight, right? It will take some time, and you will not probably feel the transition as well, because I think what's happening is a lot of this is already being used by us, right? I'm sure by now all of you know that Google and follows you everywhere, right? What search? I probably Google is the best friend that you have, because it tracks everything, it knows everything about you, right? So I think a lot of this tech is already out there, but is it there in HR? Not yet, right? But yeah, people are using this tech, to ensure that how do you develop AI and RPA in HR tech? Like I said, anything that we go to Google search and do stuff, right? And then Google Google gives you recommendations and stuff like that. So I have seen a lot of HR tech that is coming up, right? And so some of the tech that I've seen, some of Indian products are coming up very well. What you see in HR tech is that a lot of manual work is auto done by the tool itself. So that's coming in very, very, very strongly. Right? I know of very nice. I won't name it, but I know of a very fast growing tech company in India which has come up with very simple stuff. It may not think it's something like applying for leave, right? The tool does it itself, right? So it basically realizes, as in when you're writing or texting through the platform, if you even tell your friend, right, maybe you're typing into your boss saying, boss, I'm not feeling a little well. The tool actually sets up the leave application for you, saying, shall I apply for leave on your behalf? The tool asks for that. The tool asks that. You don't have to submit it, right? Stuff like that. So there's a lot of thing that is coming in. This is a very simple example that I'm talking about, but there are a lot of other examples in terms of where artificial intelligence comes in. It talks about by the kind of interactions that you've been having on the platform, right, and integrated with a lot of tools. Will tell you whether your performance is right, where you need to correct, what can happen. It also gives a lot of feedback to the leadership in terms of telling where are what is the engagement of my entire company, stuff like that, right? So based on what people are typing into the into emails. By the way, all of you know that Google reads all our emails, and I mean you should know by now, right? That Google reads everything, hears everything. In fact, I think my colleague is also there on this call. Her name is Hansa. I think we have been using HR tech for a long time, and HR actually even listens to everything that you have to say in a Google Hangout meeting, and then it's trying to capture. So I think a lot of HR tech is trying to do that as well, right? Hopefully for the right reasons, and that's about AI. Right, and RPA is coming in very strongly. I think one of my earliest stints with RPA was in 2010, where we replaced an entire recruitment team of about 12 people, right, just by putting in RPA, right? So what would happen is, in previously, people would actually manually, I think, scrape resumes, find out, what person, what kind of skill set that people have. But when we introduced RPA, it would actually kind of do all the work by itself, right? So we actually had put in a bot long back, right? It's almost about, so we started this in 2010. And then we replaced an entire HR team of 12 people whose job was to find out resumes, scrape resumes. And then once a resume comes in, when we select a candidate, how do we onboard them? All of that was done by robots, right? In fact, we kind of downsized that entire team, and that probably was one of the reasons I became a entrepreneur, saying how easily people can lose their job. So instead of losing my job, I thought, let me go and develop tech that will that will protect my job, right? That's where I think that's one of the things that I think. Nidhi, can you ping me if I'm if I'm losing time? I've got about 8 slides, so please let me know when I'm running out of time, right? Great. So this is about automation, AI and RPA. Thanks, Nidhi. I think the other thing, which is what will happen in the HR tech, is employee experience, right? I think whatever tech that we deploy and whatever tech that you choose to deploy, or tech that employee experience is coming in very well. One of the reasons for this is because a lot of our tools that we use, made, things like TikTok and Instagram, they're all so easy to use, right? So people are getting used to it. So they're comparing all of this new tech that is coming in and saying, what a crappy HR tool we have, right? So those are the kind of questions that we get asked. So HR tech is also developing such tools to ensure that employee experience is there. Is it easy for me to use, right? HR tech will work if employees adopt the HR tech. Otherwise, your tool will not work, right? So people have to, I've seen a lot of tools. They've tried to replicate, for example, one of the good tools, one of the tools that I use internally in Simpliance, they have a similar thing like Facebook on our tool, but no one uses it because there's already Facebook out there, there's already Instagram. No one uses those things. We probably use it only for, let's say, tracking leave and stuff like that, and probably running payroll or something like that. So I think what is important is how easy it is for employees to use. Is it very employee friendly on the mobile? Does it remind? It has to be as good as a TikTok or as good as an Instagram. So only then I think people will start using it. Others people may not use it. They find it actually. They may find it very difficult to log in, submit data and all of that. It becomes very difficult and people may not use it. I think that's very important in terms of how thing uses it. That's my son here. Okay, great. So I think one of the things that we're also seeing is virtual workspaces. I think we have seen. I think now a lot of people have started adopting, virtual workspaces very often. But I think this has been used, I think, by a lot of global companies and MNCs way back in 2000s, right? But I think COVID actually got everyone to use it. But I think this is going to come. But I'm not saying just using Hangouts or Zoom like what we're using. There are a couple of tools that they actually give you the feel of an experience, and I think I've shown this to a couple of people that in fact, Simplans uses it quite a bit. We have a tool called Sococo, right, which actually gives you a feel of an office, right? We can actually see who's in the office. It basically gives you a layout of the office and tells you who's where. Right, it actually gives you, in terms of, okay, I have this team working. That we can actually see them, right? But what I'm talking about is, if you've been, looking at LinkedIn or Facebook and all, you probably would have seen this hologram stuff happening, right? I have seen a couple of demos where you even have holograms as part of your virtual workspaces, right? So that's going to come in, and I'm not saying, probably in 2-3 years you'll have holograms, because I've already seen this tech working. We in fact use it quite a bit, not the hologram, but at least the virtual workspace in the way that we see it. I'm not talking about Hangouts or the Zoom meeting that we're doing right now, but we can actually see who's working with whom, who's sitting with whom, who's sharing screens with whom across the company, right? So stuff like that, that's going to come in quite a bit, because I think what happens with Hangouts or with Zoom is we really don't get a feel of an office. In an office, we would actually see, I think the feel is, if I want to talk to a person, right? Let's say in an office, I would actually look up to him and say, okay, where is my, that guy is speaking to someone. So once he finishes speaking to that person, let me go and speak to that guy, right? So this kind of effect is going to come in quite a bit. I see this coming in very strongly. I think this COVID has just accelerated the entire virtual workspace quite a bit, and I wouldn't be surprised if you see holograms in about 2 to 3 years, right? So you would actually have 3D holograms, people sitting around a table, the hologram table and stuff like that. But 3 years is what I'm looking at. It's kind of going to change completely, right? So this is something that you all will look forward to. It's going to help quite a bit. The fourth one is, I think, which is more important, is with all of this, right? I think, I don't know how many people, a lot of HR people here, but how many people do you actually think your CEO will say, this is the guy I want in the team? I don't know how many of you can actually say that to yourself, saying, okay, my CEO of my company or will say that HR is an important part for me, and I want that person sitting on the table with every decision that I make. Now, I have been very fortunate to be very close to CEOs, and probably that's what made me, develop my own tech. Is my CEO truly believed in me, in most of the CEOs that I should, because I used to find solutions with all this HR thing. We are not people. HR are not people who conduct games, who do nice stuff. HR people are people who can guide business decisions, right? Where to hire from, how to hire from, where is the talent going to come from, what is the workplace, what is the kind of environment that we're going to build, how are we going to do training, so that business, we actually make money in business, right? So HR should be guiding those decisions. It's not about doing nice stuff or doing. So I think HR tech should give them decisions of saying, if I take this 1, 2, 3 steps, my EBITDA, right, or my profit, right, will increase by so much. Those are the kind of tech reports that need to come out of it. I think a lot of people are realizing this, and there are a lot of tech is building. I think if you're choosing, if you've already chosen, very good, but if you're choosing, if you're trying to build a HR tech like me, it's very important that end of the day, all of this is being done for business. So if you can't have a HR tech that gives business decisions, right? And I'm saying business decisions instantly. It's not that we're talking about, you would say, okay, when your CEO requests you saying, can I have this report? You're saying, no, yes, boss, I'll give it to you tomorrow. No, I can give it to you right away, right now. And it's also gamification, where you say, okay, if I do this, right, then this will happen. Stuff like that. So I think that is something that's very important. I think this will bring HR tech quite a bit in making HR tech work. I think this is, a lot of people are implementing this already, and this is changing quite a bit. I think we've been all speaking about this real-time performance feedback. I think Infosys is one of the first guys to say that we are going to do away with the annual performance systems and come up with real-time performance feedback. I think this is very important. It's no more relevant to have an annual appraisal, not even a quarterly appraisal. I don't even think it's a quarterly appraisal. I think the system should give you real-time performance, saying, are you doing well or not? right? And it's not just performance, can it help you improve your performance? I think this is very important to do this. Personally, if you ask me, I've learned a lot of this from my time with the armed forces, with the Navy, right? There was a system where, people would give you real-time feedback weekly, right? There was a very nice mechanism that we had. We would call it the divisional system, where every officer would, go give performance feedback to every sailor. I've tried to probably use that quite a bit in Simplines, and today we have a very strong team in Simplines. I've practiced it since then, and most of my team members in Simplines have stuck around with me. So I picked up people along my time in Nokia, in Microland, in Syngenta, and all of them have been there with me. Our attrition is very low in Simplines, primarily because I think we've used that system of giving real-time feedback. In terms of setting up goals and giving real-time feedback, not once in 3 months, not once in 1 year, but actually giving it every week, right? Every day, in fact. Now we have daily huddles, right? We are daily huddles where we actually look at performance and say, where are we? Why are we not doing stuff? Can we do this better, right? Not finding faults, but helping people on a real time, saying we can make this course correction, right? These are things that are going to help us quite a bit. Just a time check. I got about 10 minutes, right, Nidhi? I think, yeah.
Yes, Anand. Exactly 10 minutes. Thank you.
So I think this is something that I've got 3 more slides. So just let me finish this off. So I think this is very important for a tool to give you this back, right? But fortunately, I have been doing it. It's a combination of tech and people, right? But our tool should help this up quite a bit, right? Yeah, that coming on to that next one is, from a performance tool is how does HR tech help task planning for HR, not just HR teams. I think it's all for the entire teams, right? I think between what is said and what is done, right? What is important is how do we track it, and that is where people will make or break teams, and people, I think one of the codes that I have lived by, and probably you all would have heard, and one of the codes that we Simplines live by is walk the talk, right? Now, what we say in a meeting, what we commit to people in meetings, right, and what we actually deliver, right, is what probably will make people appreciate you. But we being humans, right, it's very difficult to keep track of everything. We like to say stuff, we like to do good stuff, but how do you keep track of it, right? When you say something, how can you easily track it, right? Let's say we do a lot of meetings. HR tech, which enables task planning, right, will go a long way because it improves performance of teams. You say, okay, in this particular meeting, we said this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tasks. These 5 tasks are assigned to this project, and these are the timelines. And but this when I put in those tasks, it actually tells that you will not be able to deliver because you already have 100 other tasks to complete, right? So you end up being very, very organized. I think this is something that we need to help in some terms of tech. I think this is something that is going to happen. A lot of tech tools are coming up with these kind of tools, right? Which was not previously there. And one of the other important things is knowledge management. I think today a lot of stuff people are keeping it in their heads. What is very important is an HR tool that has knowledge management in it, right? Everything that you're saying, doing, and basically not recreating the wheel. So those knowledge management, which actually comes up and tells you this has already been tried before, this is how it worked, this is what we tried in the previous project, right? And this is the stuff that you need to do in the next project and stuff. Like, let's say someone quits immediately, right? Someone tries and goes, where is the continuity of that entire thing? So how do that knowledge get into the system, right? So this is very important, and a lot of tech tools are coming up with this kind of stuff in terms of knowledge management, ensuring that there is always continuity in work that is being done in a company, right? So this is something that is very important. This is not work when I say task in a finance tool or something. I'm saying real artistic IP that people generate, which is generally in their mind. So how do we get that into the system, right? This can really help quite a bit. And I keep telling people, I think some of the most successful countries or successful organizations have actually managed knowledge very well. And some of the companies which have not done very well or not doing very well, whether it's a startup, whether it's a MSME or a very large company, success of a company depends on how well they've managed their knowledge, right? So to kind of be successful. And I think this is the last one. I think I have another 4-5 minutes. I think this is the last one that I have as a slide. It's seamless integration. So HR tech by itself will not survive because there are other organizations, there are other departments in a company. So right from your finance, which is the most strongest department in any company, finance, you have operations, you have procurement, you have you have procurement, finance, operations. So these are very important bits. You have legal as well, right? So these are all important parts of a company, right? So if your HR tech is silos, right, it probably wouldn't work because finance can, and I'll tell you what, say what you may, but the CEO of a company will always listen to a CFO first, right? Unless a CHR or HR guy is actually is much better than a CFO, right? Because I think end of the day we all know money matters. So what would happen is your HR tech has to be in sync with the finance tech, right? Data has to move seamlessly. Why data has to move seamlessly? Because I think apportioning costs, right, amount of work done, to which customer it has to be billed, stuff like that only happens if this finance HR systems get integrated. I mean, if you're a larger company, then you need to have the procurement systems integrated, and you'll have to have legal systems integrated, right? So it's very important that, and not just that. I think what I've realized in a lot of things is certain tech is good at certain stuff, right? Um, you know, you may have an email system which may not have all the benefits of HR tech. For example, Microsoft Outlook may integrate with certain HR tech, but may not integrate with everything, right? You may have, Gmail, which may be very good at search, but may not integrate with HR tech. So stuff like that. I think it's very important that your HR tech, whether what is coming up, it will develop seamless. It has to develop seamless integration with other tech. Otherwise, it will fall quite a bit. I think this is something that we are looking at. Even in Simpline, we're seeing how we can actually integrate with payroll systems, right? Whether a seamless integration. I think these are some of the 8 things that I put together from my experience, right? You can always, if you search the internet, I'm sure you will get a lot of things about what future is going to look like. But I think this is what, in my eyes, future is going to look like, And quickly going back, I think what is most important that you will see are these 8 aspects that you see, right? And like I said, HR tech will develop differently for different streams of companies, right? It will for a large company, it may develop very differently. For a medium company, it will develop differently. For a small company, it will develop differently, right? Because a company which is very large, which has already adopted a system which is working very seamlessly, for them to adopt new technology and implement it is very difficult. Like I told you before, buying HR tech or investing heavily in tech that looks very fancy may not actually work. You will have to look at the maturity of your organization and see what fits them. I think these are some of the 8 points. I think I'm done with the time. Great. If anyone has any questions, you can always email me later, right? And come back to me. Thank you, Nidhi. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Anil. Thank you, Anil. Anil, we have 2 questions right away in the Q&A. I'll take them up. So we have someone asking us, how beneficial is AI and technology for the future? Is it required? How will it manifest itself in different sectors, and how will it impact the value of human interaction?
Great. I think AI can be used in many ways. AI and RPA can be used in many ways. It will come. You don't have to worry. It's not that it's going to come like there's going to be sudden rain, fire in the stuff like that. There won't be rain, fire, and stuff like that. It's going to naturally come up. I think what will happen, it's definitely going to replace people over a period of time. I think people are working. In fact, in Simplines itself, I'll give you an example of how, from a compliance standpoint, right, we are eliminating people in compliance altogether, right? Today, we've eliminated the requirement of a legal person, HR compliance person completely, because our tool reads the company data and automatically sets the compliance systems, right? Similarly, I have seen tools. For example, a very simple example is your HR help desk, right? I think every company has a HR help desk. You don't need a HR help desk anymore, right? Because the AI is picking up those questions and answering it themselves today. Most of the AI tech that is coming in. So slowly, I think what is repetitive in nature, right, will slowly go away. And AI is like a baby, and AI is growing. You have to look at AI as a baby, right? So baby has started. Maybe it's in his 3rd year or 4th year. And if anyone has as a child, you've seen how intelligent they become over time. As a baby, they probably wouldn't have understood anything. But as time passes, they're collecting knowledge. And this bots and AI has actually started collecting knowledge already. I have seen tools which are very, very nice, which give you the right answer, right? So what is going to happen? It will manifest itself. So one of the easiest thing that will take over is things like HR help desk. It will take things such as identifying, probably eliminate a lot of the recruiter's job, right? Because most of what recruiter does today is probably finding out if the right fit is there. So that is going to go away. What it will not take away yet is probably the human interaction bit of it yet, right? Because I think it is still yet to learn. But probably AI has been about 3-4 years is what we've been talking about. So tech is, it's developing itself. People like me are spending a lot of time to see how to replace people, because that's how I sell my business, by the way, right? So if I go to let's say a CHR of a GE or Google or Amazon, what is my how will I sell my product? I'll say, no, I'm going to save so much cost for you, right? That's okay. I can save so much cost my company. So people like us are working on it. So it's going to replace a lot of work in terms of a recruiter's work. It's going to replace business partnering. It will take away most of the transactional work of it. Interaction bit of it, it's still going to take some time. I think a lot of, in fact, I think reading words, accent, all of that is going to take some time. Even with Google has not been able to, we make a lot of fun of Google in our meetings, all my entire team, because it doesn't understand yet the local accent, right? So those are very, so it's going to manifest itself. It's going to come. It's going to be very important. Be ready for it. I would suggest you guys have to be the first to adopt it. Less that you lose your jobs, saying, okay, no, you lost your job because something else is coming in, right? You guys look out, see what is there in the market, pick it up, try to deploy it in your company, right? So that's what you guys look up. That's the first question. It's going to come. It's going to come very fast, right? It's going to replace a lot of people's jobs.
I understand. I
Great.
think we have
Any
a
other-
corresponding question, Anil. Yes, we have a corresponding question, and I think it links up to the aspect of human interaction again. We have a question from an attendee who says, can too much of data-driven or real-time feedback affect employee motivation and performance? How does one arrive at standard metrics for conducting real-time feedback?
So I think it depends on the culture of the organization. Like I told you, right? So when in my company, we use a lot of data, right, to check employee feedback. But as the CEO of the company, I don't use it to fire people. I use it to help people. So it depends on the culture of the company. A lot of data, if used properly, can be very, very helpful. If you have an empathetic way of dealing with data, right? So this has gone wrong. So okay, this has gone wrong. I will help you improve it. If that is the approach, it will really help, right? But if you're saying, okay, it's a lot of data, you're not doing your job. I know. I think you're not worth it. If that is the tone that you take, it's probably not going to work, right? So I think data definitely work, but it's the culture. I think people will always be people, right? And I think human interaction is always going to be much better than tech, because when tech is still learning, an adult is, tech is a baby, right? We are adults now, human beings, right? We're always going to improvise, because it's going to take away my, normal day-to-day job, but we're always thinking of new things to do, right? So people tell me what happens, if people take away our job. Let's say we'll go to Mars and do something in Mars, right? Because tech, we will be, human beings will, let's say, what to do in Mars, because a tool still doesn't know about Mars, but we want, our imagination is too big, right? I can go to Mars, I can imagine what beyond Mars and stuff like that. So we always have work to do. But I think use tech, use data wise, use it, but use it wisely, right? That's what I would say.
I think I'm going to go back to what you said a little while ago, that it's the people behind the tech that makes tech work, and not vice versa. Absolutely. I think we just take one quick question, Anil, before we culminate the session. We have a question saying, how does the digital transformation or HR tech work when compared with a developed versus a developing country? How will it evolve in India in the next 5 years? A very interesting question there.
If you take India as an example, it's developing very quickly. And some of the tech that I see being developed in India, I think, most of the development happens in India. So I see a lot of guys who went back. So, I know I'll take a little bit of time, but I was a tech guy myself. So I was one of those computer science graduates way back in 90s, who learned COBOL, coded in COBOL and stuff there. Most of my colleagues went off to the US, most of them are in US right now, but I had this passion of joining the Navy and serving the country, adventure and stuff like that. right? I have no two thoughts about it. I have the best time of my life. But a lot of these tech guys in the US, right, have come back and they said, why should we develop tech in the US? Why can't I develop in India, right? A lot of my friends have come back and they're developing very good tech right here in India, right? And I see a lot of now I think there is, I would say, equilibrium attained in terms of tech across the globe. You don't have to go to a
Mm-hmm.
developed country to see good tech. You see that right here in India, right? So a lot of good tech is being developed here. The digital transformation is going to happen much faster here because I think a lot of people have been being used to it. A lot of people have learned that, a lot of people know how to code in India, right? So the digital transformation is going to happen much more faster in India than the developed world. I think if you go back in history, there's always been up and down. Right, some company over a period of over 2 centuries, some countries go up and some countries go down. Right, so this is
Right.
the time
Right.
India is seeing, and I think over a period of time, you must have seen a very simple thing like Arogya Setu app being adopted very quickly,
Very
right?
quickly. Yeah.
Very quickly. I think that's going to happen, and HR tech is also going to get very well. And I see a lot of guys, developing tech in India, right? And that's going to get transformation is going to happen very quickly. I think what will help the transformation is cheap, good technology being developed in India. That's what's going to help, right?
Perfect.
Right.
Thank you, Anu. Thank you.
Great, Nick. Thank you so much. Thank you, Natasha. And
Thanks
I
so
will.
much.
Bye.
Perfect. I think we've got a great continuum of conversations happening this afternoon, having spoken about the COVID crisis and how it's forcing organizations to relook at the HR processes and operations through a digital lens, and how the adoption of AI in HR. Thank you for bringing out right from talent acquisition to working in virtual spaces, to guiding business decisions, to providing real-time performance feedback, to aiding in task planning, and to enabling knowledge management. So ladies and gentlemen, we've got a lot of food for thought this afternoon about how tech is right there in the face. And as I just mentioned, probably we would be faster on the learning curve than the other developed nations. So we've got to buckle up. I think moving on, we have this afternoon Jayati. Jayati Roy joins us from Barco. She's the Director HR at Barco. Now, Jayati started her corporate journey in 2003 after her master's from XLRI. She has dabbled her learning journey between corporate and consulting roles while leading complex businesses to success. She has contributed extensively in organizational development and transformation, leadership coaching, and strategic HR during her professional journey. Jayati, we welcome you to the webinar this afternoon. Hi, good to have you here with us.
Thanks, Nidhi, and thanks, Anil, for setting the stage for this discussion. I think it was a pleasure hearing you folks, and would be lovely to actually stay in the background and keep listening. That's what I was enjoying so far. I'll just try and share screen through a couple of quick slides that are there. Is it visible at all?
Not at the moment. Jayati will give it another minute.
Not yet. Just give me a couple of minutes. Has it come up?
Yes, it has.
Okay, sorry. So thanks for setting the context, and sorry there was a technical glitch after all the tech HR talk that we had, but nevertheless, agility, as we say in learning, is what we'll stick to. So we will quickly figure out ways of learning and move on from there. What I'll do over the next few minutes that I have, as we set context, is talk about how I have experienced agility, because the theory around agility, what we do, etc., is all available on the net. I don't really want to give you a lot of information which you can read up, but more from my experience, how I've experienced it, what I've seen, and how I've learned. So as we set context, quickly a look at some of these words. And, as we see the words preemptive, adaptive, responsive, um, nimble, these are thoughts that keep coming up. These are not just words as such, but they are also thoughts that we keeping in mind as we look at the word agility. Similarly, when we look at organizations, I could have, of course, said Kodak, like we all know, as a story. I could have also looked at disruption and used the word Airbnb, but I've purposefully refrained from either an organization which has been an extreme left where we've not progressed to someone who's been a complete disruptor. But constantly evolving organizations is what you see the screen with. And then what we often confuse agility with. So it's an easy escape route, right? Off and on, we try a lot of things, one thing after the other. When we fail, we say, acha, we were agile and, we were just trying to be agile and therefore we failed. So is this what is agility? Do we really mean experimenting, toggling out with a lot of things? You succeed, great. You don't, you toggle with something else. While yes, taking risks is agility, but like we've heard McKinsey say, agility is about an ability of the organization to keep adapting, but agility requires stability. So it is not something which is constantly disruptive, changing, moving all the time. What does it do? It typically translates into business value. So therefore, you will have accountability, you will have constant learning or continuous learning. It talks a lot, like the agile principles, about the customer engagement, innovation, and people and revenue being at the crux of it. So Anil was referring to finance and revenue being a very key player in an organization. When you're looking at the future of an organization or the future of the economy and an agile organization, people are at the central driving force. So people and revenue growth in a sustainable manner. I think those are very key and powerful words. And the only bit of theory, trust me, when I leave on this slide. What we'll quickly do is talk through my professional journey, the number of organizations that I've worked with, and what have I learned through each of these. The first organization that I had been associated with was, into the petroleum refining, petroleum and LPG sale kind of an organization. It was a very formal structure, very command and control driven. It's again, an oligopoly market, not too much of a competition, very regimented government defined rules and protocols. So you're not jumping up and down, trying out new things. Scope of innovation, while it is there, it's not that we didn't try, but they are limited from the structural approval protocols. When I moved on from here to the next organization, it was an IT services organization. Now, what was an IT services organization doing? Trying out newer markets, evolving as we speak. If we are looking at a certain talent and we realized at that point of time that, okay, a certain skill is niche, what do? You typically go ahead and hire. And when you can't hire, then you build it in. So when you look at a global center, you look at the customer base and you say, okay, there are a lot of customers in the USA, or there are a lot of customers in the EMEA region. Why don't we set up offices in a certain city where there is a customer base where we need to support, move on, build on, and so on. So it is another organization where you're structurally made in a way where you are controlled by the headquarters, but you're loosely structured, but with a control somewhere at the center. What's interesting to note is also in the previous organization, there were large asset bases. So you will have a lot of CapEx items in place. IT services is a knowledge workforce, so there is not so much of capex objects. The next organization had a mix of both. So it is a global multinational, which makes it fairly large. There are government controlled businesses. So if you look at something which is energy related, something that is aerospace related, there are government controls. So there are those bits which are restricting, which are core to the organization. But then there are aspects of in country, for country kind of things that come in. And those are buzzwords that we keep hearing even today across organizations. These are smaller teams in local markets, nimble on the foot, walking around, easy response to the market, coming up with newer changes. So that's the other structure where there are cores which will continue to be governed in a structured manner, but there are loose coupling in as well. So what do I do? What was my takeaway from this, even as I moved on to the role of a consultant? Clearly, when we look at building an agile organization, few factors play up, right? The kind of competition that you have in a space is important. The kind of assets that you have or the business dynamics that you are in, these do play an important role. You can't do a cut, copy, paste of what is working in one scenario, one market, or one organization into another. What I've realized over a period of time is, first and foremost, we need to ensure that we hire only agile employees when we are building a new team, which means there has to be a cultural fitment, people who are willing to learn, people who are willing to take risks. And as we move on, I'll of course talk about a little more of what we could look at as traits for employees, individual contributors, leaders, etc. Moving on to the next piece, look at the interaction, which means look at the organization structure. How does the information flow? What is the control mechanism? So that's another piece that's very important when you're looking at agility. We can't say I'll have a very tight control, but we need to be completely agile. Most importantly, and we will keep seeing this over and over again, build that culture which can handle ambiguity. Build that culture which will allow that bit of flexibility. Within my current organization, we are, of course, redoing a full-fledged culture exercise just to enable that the strategy fits in right. So culture is a very important piece in this whole game. Having said that, communication is the make or break of any deal. We know that. So how do you handle communication? What is your level of access to information? Because when you're at a loosely coupled kind of an organization and the right people are not getting the right set of information, they're not going to be able to succeed. So how do you enable the right communication metric? Leverage technology, digital transformation. Anil has taken away the whole piece around this. I'm not spending time. But most importantly, constant upskilling and learning, because that's the only way that you're going to be uphill on the curve. As we move on, we realize that there are 5 trends which are typically shaping the future of work. All of us know that there are new behaviors, the whole piece around social media, web, digital that's been there. So from an era where there were lots of books, copies, etc., notes being taken from one desk to the other, to a system where, even emails are passé, and you could actually look at a Yammer, you could look at Slacks, wiki pages are the talk of the day. Phones have actually replaced something like a laptop is also a behavior or a trend. A combination of technology and behavior is what I just managed to speak about. The millennial workforce, all of us have been speaking about the VUCA world, the new age economy. So the way they expect, what they think of growth, how they are comfortable about working has been the key driver of change. Mobility or the access or the opening up of the global world into one scenario. And of course, as there were 5 trends, we now have the 6th trend. No guesses around this. We've all seen the global pandemic, like the COVID-19, has had a significant toll on how agility is taking shape. Things have been thrust on us. We've almost been compelled to quickly change our track, shift gears, and move on. So we've had organizations which have posted that 75% of their workforce is actually going to be sitting and working out of home even for the next few years. completely unplanned. So those are few things which are going to lead to the trend. Like I had promised in the initial part as I spoke, what is the role of an individual, of a people leader, or of an organizational leader in this space? I want to just spend a couple of minutes as we speak. The few traits as we take along for an individual in this is that we look at a person who displays flexibility. Flexibility to change tracks when needed, adapt to unknown circumstances like a COVID. How do you take charge of the situation, move from there and suddenly look at, a new setup, new way of working? um, does the person have an undying hunger to learn and keep unlearning? So it's not that I've gained a new technology knowledge, I've gained a new domain knowledge, and I'm an expert on that. Every time you learn something, there is more to learn, there is more to pick up. So how do you pick those skills up? That's something that we need to constantly look out for. So when you say you hire right, these are few things you might want to keep in mind as you look for somebody who's going to be fitting into the organization. Does the person have an appetite for risk? And this is going to keep reflecting at different levels of maturity. Someone who is completely risk averse, and of course we have different degrees of risk taking for people, but completely risk averse is going to be very difficult to sustain in an organization which is looking at changing tracks very soon. Similarly, what is your level of resilience? Do you get bogged down or do you bounce back at the change of tracks? I've of course said demonstrating integrity. Why is it important today more than ever? Given the whole concept where everybody is working from home, you really have no clue who's doing anything, and organizations are talking about productivity. Integrity continues to be the cornerstone of driving any kind of performance or any kind of behavior. So I think these are key skills which are there. A lot of it is common to what was there, in the earlier era of the century. But as we look at today and we look tomorrow, some of these would become increasingly important, which is why I decided to highlight them in a different color altogether. As we look at hiring someone who's a people leader, and I've purposely used the word leader and not a manager, because I don't want at this situation to speak about somebody taking management control on somebody else. So you can only be that leader, the coach, the mentor for another person who's able to free float and work on their own specialist knowledge. Who's a leader is typically somebody who leads by example, someone who's able to adapt to the future employee, his or her needs. So it's not the old school my way or the highway kind of a workforce anymore. Someone who believes in sharing and believes in the concept of collective intelligence, because that's exactly how it's going to work as we proceed. Talent development, real-time recognition are really, really going to be key. Like Anil was saying, how do you give feedback is important. Something that we as an organization have adopted through, a frequent feedback kind of a mechanism where we don't wait for a year-end time frame where somebody can actually go ahead and give an appraisal feedback and say, hey, this is how you worked through the day. The generation is such that nobody's really going to wait for the end of the period. Or if you're working in agile teams and scrum teams, really the concept of retrospective does not allow you to go back till your final goods or product is delivered to give you feedback. So the concept of iterative recognition, iterative feedback is extremely important. And the person needs to be able to do that or feel comfortable to do that, most importantly. Also, what becomes important in this day and age is someone who needs to have a high level of emotional intelligence. The EQ starts becoming an equally important component along with the IQ aspect of an individual. So does resilience. Like I talked about an individual, I'm talking about a people leader, because enough and more stressors would be there about how do you manage work, how do you ensure productivity, how do you ensure deliverables. Alongside that, how do you build talent? Are they safe? So there are going to be ample questions which will keep bouncing back by a leader. So when you're not with someone, you're not used to that working culture, truly, how do you team up as one big team and keep delivering endlessly towards the customer goals? Also important would be to look at how does this person leverage his or her network. So, there were days when the organization would be there, you would be in that formal structure, come down, have a conversation, get the resources needed, get work out and over. You're in a more collective zone, very ambiguous. It's a complete nebulous area in which you're delivering. So, how do you seek information? While we talk of communication and other things, as other aspects very clearly, it's also important to ensure you do have a strong network from where you're learning, and you're passing that learning on to the teams as well. As you grow from being a people leader to an organizational leader, there are certain dynamic changes that one needs to see. Of course, understanding of technology is there at all levels, but a deeper understanding of technology to be able to take strong decisions as and when needed. A long, a lot of high appetite for risk, because that's the only way you could take some of those tough calls. How do you lead at times of crisis is a skill that's going to be put on to test and has been put on to test for a lot of our leaders even today. One needs to be able to keep adjusting their sail, and as one of our leaders keeps saying, keep questioning the status quo. Nothing can be stationary anymore. Unless you're questioning what is there, unless you're constantly adjusting the sails, you are going to be eaten away by someone else and you'll soon perish. So you keep recharging yourself constantly. What's important is also to possess a broad knowledge base. So it's not just important that you're a great marketing or a sales director and you become the head of an organization, or you're a great finance head and therefore you've become the head of an organization. I'm purposely not saying great HR heads because very few examples to actually substantiate that. But it's important, as you become the head of an organization, you are someone who understands the different aspects of the organizational working. Do you understand the people dynamics, which means the functions of HR well? Do you understand the functions of marketing, software, digital? Do you understand how the whole revenue metrics work? So finance needs to be at your fingertips. So you broaden yourself from your knowledge base as you grow up into an organizational leader. How does it change now? Of course, you needed to be this broad-based earlier also, but you would have strong pillars of support. While you have those pillars of support even today, a lot of times decision making is done at a moment when your pillars of support may not be physically present with you. So you need to be well versed in a lot of these subjects, which means gone are the days when super specialization alone would help you become the king. Yes, there would be specialists, but if you really want to be that top leader, I think learning the skills of running an organization and generalist experience is something what's going to become a lot more important. As we move on from a basic traits that we could look at for people, and of course these would depend and vary from organization to organization depending on what's important. So some would get dropped, new skills would get added depending on the scenarios. What do I think, and this is purely my thinking, the future workplace would look like? And when I say what do I think the future workplace would look like, I look at it from a lens of people, structure, and processes. So look at it from three filters just to bring a sort of semblance of structure to this. So the future workplace from a structural aspect is going to be something which is a hybrid. While there is still continuing to go, will still continue to have a central core team, which is the differentiator, which is your USP, which is what you've been leading with, what you stand for. We will increasingly see loosely coupled extensions. So the in country for country would be a reality. We will also see communities of people coming together. So if you look at instances, talent which are contract, willing to work on contract, willing to work on retainer basis would become a large population as we go forward. This community is going to be available to move around from one organization to the other as a community, as individuals, available to ramp up and down as we move. So that's the true gig economy that we've been speaking about. Uh, it gives them to be a good specialist in their domain. It helps them understand and deliver value. And it helps you to ramp up as you want and ramp down when you want as well. It also helps you to get the best talent who have a lot of market intelligence, which can come to your help at that point of time. So it's a mixture that ways, community driven organizations, which are also with talent, which are loosely coupled with some people working as the core division or the core functions of the organization. These core people are your domain experts. They are the ones who worked on your product. They have your product awareness, product knowledge. Now, because your communities are moving from one company to the other, there would be some bit of intellectual property related matters that you wouldn't want to share. So your domain experts and your knowledge workers would still be needed, who will keep that knowledge safe with you. However, it's important that we will need to have these people constantly learning and adapting as the organization maneuvers around. So organizations would continue to be nimble footed. We won't have very large monolithic organizations. Even if they are there, their structures would be such so that they could move around and restructure themselves. A lot of mergers, acquisition, divestitures are happening even within the consulting world as we speak, within the financial world. So all industries seem to be going through this turmoil in a cyclical manner to substantiate this whole change of the future workplace. When we are looking at processes, they're going to be clearly articulated or central core processes. So what is core to us is going to be articulated, is going to be documented, is going to be passed on from one generation of people to the other. That's the whole process around knowledge management, which is going to be preserved as well. Like I said, a lot of focus around security, around data protection, around intellectual property would be coming into play. As we have workers moving across different organizations, as we have global workforces teaming up, and not just local experts for large teams. Of course, there's going to be a constant evolving process leveraging technology. So what could be done in a certain way today with disruption, which constant evolution of technology would be done in a different way. So that bit of flexibility of processes, flexibility around competition, flexibility on change of market dynamics, legislation changes would keep impacting the way businesses would be run. So these are few thoughts that I had, of course, to look at how a future workplace is going to be shaped up. Like I said, people would still remain to be the core. You could have wonderful processes, but as long as your talent is not right and your leadership is not able to handle this best talent towards the best possible capability, nothing is going to survive. So I think while you have the right tools, while you have the right structure, what's going to be important are two or three things: the right people at an individual level and the leadership level, and the best culture, which is going to be leading this whole process ahead. Therefore, what I would leave with as the only earmarked skills that would take us to the next era is the skill or the ability to learn, to unlearn what we have learned, because of course, by the time you finish learning one thing, the world has moved on. And if needed, to relearn or learn something new again. As long as we are up to it, I think we are safe in the future. We won't become dinosaurs very soon. The organizations would be agile and future proof ourselves. So that's what I had to share. Nidhi, over to you, and I'm open to questions if needed.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jayati. What a pertinent conversation that we've had with you this afternoon. I think this is going to go a long way in helping address our some of the qualms that we had as HR practitioners about what the future workplace would look like. I think we have three questions. I'll just quickly take up the first one, which says, in what ways can agility be implemented in structured versus unstructured business environment?
Sure. I don't know if the question was asked before I went through it in detail, but I would still put together a couple of pointers that can come in handy. So when there is a structured environment, it's easier, right? You know that, well, you need to first address some of your basic processes that you would want to translate. So look at that whole understanding of what's your environment, scan it to see what's your competition looking like, where you think you want to be, place yourself around that dynamic cycle, and then look at, okay, if this is where I want to be, where am I today? Are my processes aligned to take me to my desired goal? If not, what are the new age processes that I could pick up from competition or other sources? So those could be pointers if it's a very structured setup. So first, scan the environment, do a scanning of your existing process, do a scanning of your existing capabilities or talent. So if this is where I want to go to drive agility, is my talent capable to do that? If not, what do I need to do it? Build talent or buy talent? So the build versus buy game needs to be sorted out. Similarly, is my technology capability ready to keep up with the next pace of change of drive of agility? Build it or buy it? Or, a mix of both, develop it internally. So, if you do that structured intervention, step by step, process by process, you'll be there. The fun begins when it's a very unstructured environment, and small players need to do it. Competition is at your doorstep knocking. I think the first thing we need to look at is scan the market, scan your competition. A lot of times it's easier to just pick up what they're doing right now and see if it's working for them. Why will it not work for you? So keep your eyes and ears open to understand what the ground realities are. Like I keep saying, don't be the Kodak and miss out the change that's happening around you. But once you've picked that up,
Yeah.
I think the first step or two steps that you need to do is look at technology. Do you have the right sets of tools, technology, processes? And look at your people. So are your people
Right.
capable enough to drive this? If these two are fixed right in the beginning, I think the rest of it can move on from there.
Perfect. I think that would, in some part, answer the third question that we had. I'll still put it up, Jayati. It says, how does one ensure that organizations continue to be agile on a continuous basis or a consistent basis?
Yeah, so I guess I spoke too much and I answered the third question as well. But
Yeah, that's
like it's important and pertinent to say, keep, and I would keep saying this, keep reiterating, learning, unlearning, relearning, like I said, is important. What's also important to be vigilant of how the dynamics are changing. Because by the time we realize we've made one significant change and transformation, the world has moved on and you need to be on a continuum of change and transformation.
absolutely.
So don't go on for these mega changes which will take many years to implement, because we really don't have years to see those changes. If you were to look at an impact versus the time kind of a metric, look at the low hanging fruits, start making those changes, because those will give you quick wins very easily, and then move on to see, okay,
Yeah.
where is my sail need to get adjusted, and keep changing your gears accordingly. That's what I would say, and I've learned in the past as well.
Perfect. Perfect. Jayati, we also have a corresponding question that speaks about, when does an organization know when to be agile and when not? Can agility always guarantee stability in the VUCA world?
I'm wondering, and the reason I'm silent is I'm thinking which organization does not want to be agile, which is the cause of the silence. But
Or has a choice?
yeah, or has a choice to not be agile. Trust me, every organization, whether you like it or you don't, like COVID did to us, whether we liked it or we didn't like it, it was thrust on us. We were stuffed into our houses, and we just had to make these change in processes and systems, right? So yes, there's going to be a difference in the degree to which you can be agile, and that's what I spoke about in the initial few minutes when I was talking of my experience. Now, if you're this large organization governed by a lot of protocols, the extent to which you can be agile is going to be limited. But if you're another nimble-footed organization, like I say, or you're into knowledge workers, or you're into an industry which is very agile, you would have to be sure-footed, you would have to be quick. So a lot depends on which industry do you belong to, how is that industry reacting, which means your external environment. A lot also depends on what's your appetite for risk. So I may say I want to be extremely agile and adopt all the disruptive technologies, but the capital that I have with me and as an organization does not allow me the luxury to do this. So I will have to pick and choose my battle. So let's be practical. Yes, being agile is a fad. Yes, being agile is a reality. We need to do it, but cut your coat according to your cloth. So if you have a certain limitation of capital, if you have certain limitation of resources, because any kind of agile transformation, any kind of digital transformation would require bandwidth, it would require resources to be deployed. So everybody cannot do everything. I think there are a lot of these factors which would pose a practical threat on us as we keep in mind and proceed to implement these changes. I hope I've answered the question.
I'm sure our attendees and our guests are finding this conversation really relevant. So I think from my own perspective, I think this is very, very well answered. I think it's very contextual to what we're dealing with when transformation becomes a mandate for us and no longer an event that, you know, we as an organization could, you know, put our resources and plan at large and leisure. I think we need some of these tips that you've given us, specifically the attributes around the individual leader level, the people leader level, and the org leader level. I'm sure the participants and the attendees have really gained a lot back to take back to their organizations and their workplaces. Thank you very much this afternoon, Jyoti.
Thanks for your time, Nidhi, and thank you everyone for being with us, and look forward to learning mutually from the others as well.
Perfect. So everyone stay right there. We're moving to the third section of our webinar today. And it's a very, very contextually relevant section. With this pandemic sweeping the world, it is also causing widespread concern, fear, and stress, all of which are natural and normal reactions to a changing and uncertain situation that we are finding ourselves in these days. We now have Gary Turner from the Interpersonal Catalyst, United Kingdom, who shall be sharing an insider's view on managing our mental health and well-being in the future workplace. Gary has a very interesting journey from international sales and product management to being recognized as one of the keynote and disrupt HR speakers. He currently has been an interpersonal catalyst to promote human connection, innovation, and growth of individuals in teams and relations. He has worked extensively on cultural team transformation, cultural expansion of organizations from regional to global businesses, and connection-centered programs in L&D. He is also part of Humans First Club and has wrapped up a speaker session for them recently. Gary is also writing his first book, Change is an Inside Job, which will be published soon. Gary, we look forward to being a part of your readers' audience. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. The floor is all yours.
Lovely. Thanks so much, Nadine. Thanks everyone for the invitation today. And may I say, I'm back in Mumbai. I've been to Mumbai every year for the last 4 years. And it's a beautiful city. So great to be with you again. I'll just share my screen and I'll hope that that's visible for you. Nidhi, is that okay?
Yes, we can see.
Fantastic, thank you. So the lens I'd like to look at this mental health conversation through is actually a lens less on the symptoms. So, you know, and I'd rather look at the root causes. So how can you, on an individual level and also on a collective level within your organizations, look to try and build more resilience up front rather than deal with the symptoms of burnout and stress and anxiety. So I just want to frame that that's the lens I'm going to take you through over the next 25 minutes or so, is more of a root cause and proactive lens from my own lived experience as someone that did burn out several years ago. So a very short intro. Thanks very much, Nidhi, for introducing me there. I just really want to emphasize the lived experience lens that I want to speak with you about today. So I've worked in international sales for over 20 years and also in product management. I am a chartered member of the CIPD, which is the leading people institution, which you may be aware of in the UK. I won't dive into that because Nidhi's already shared. Yeah, and I love talking about topics around vulnerability, mental health, people-centered organizational design, and currently writing my first book, Change is an Inside Job. And I think that's a really important point I'd like to hold with you for a second, is quite often we believe or we give away our power because we think things are outside of our control or our influence. And I think that's something I'd like for you to hold lightly as I go through this presentation and in advance of any questions you may have, is that have a think about that as we go. Do you think change is an inside job, or is change something that happens to you? Just have a little think about that as we go. So I just want to share one quote with you, because I think it's very, very relevant for our times as we all navigate as one human race this very unique challenge we're all dealing with. And that's Buckminster Fuller, who shared some time ago that you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. And I think the two previous speakers have done a wonderful job of really speaking to that, which is, do we want to be part of the next solution? Do we want to change the belief structures and how we organize as businesses and society? Or do we fall back into the old ways? And I think there's a huge opportunity for us individually to really step into our power right now. And I think it's particularly important as part of the Value Through Vulnerability podcast that I host. David Marquet, I'm not sure if you're aware of him, but he used to be a Navy commander. He wrote a book called Turn the Ship Around, and more recently, Leadership is Language, 2 books I could strongly recommend to you. But when he joined me back on episode 7, he shared that the greatest waste on the planet is what's sitting on top of everybody's shoulders. Part of the mental health epidemic, if we just stay with the symptoms for a moment, is the incredibly excessive busyness that we all overthink our way into. Life is busy. We have things to do. We have targets to hit. We're having reviews. When you're in HR, you're building in new systems. But I would like to invite you to think about how much of that stuff, that effort, that energy that you give away really adds value to you as an individual and to the organization that you serve. As in, be really, really critical, because we're coming out of a paradigm of command and control. And I believe that's been spoken to brilliantly by the speakers so far, is we're going beyond organizational culture and national culture into this very holistic view of what the future of work is going to look like. And I truly believe the future of work is human. But for us to really step into that, we need to better understand our own human experience if we're going to manage and be aware of our mental health more effectively. And I just want to offer a question. Do you believe that the outside world causes you to feel a certain way or not? And again, it's for you to think that through as we go through this presentation. So why this is such an important conversation, and one for me personally, as I mentioned, I burnt myself out several months ago. And part of the reason for that is that I didn't deal with the stories I told myself. So I was bullied as a young person. We all have our own story, our own life story. But if we don't actually realize the stories that layer up over our life, that can become burnout. That can become anxiety. So I just want to hold that space for you, just to think about, are there stories that you're telling yourself right now that are not true, or they're unhealthy beliefs? And what can you do maybe to let those go and be kinder to yourself? Because it's really important that we step into those conversations. And I'm really grateful for joining you today, because just on the 2017 statistics, in the UK, this is Mental Health First Aid England statistics, 15.8 million working days were lost due to a mix of anxiety, stress and depression, and that cost the UK economy £35 billion. Now, again, I'm only going to spend a little bit of time at the symptoms, but I think it's an important scene setting. Also, loneliness is on the rise, and the other speakers today have, we can be connected here virtually, and I believe that we all are, but we can feel very disconnected as well when everybody's now working from home. They have families around them, they have the dog, they have the cat. Suddenly that ability to stop and slow down and think is even smaller. So we can actually feel more lonely even if there's more people around us. And I think that's something really to be thinking about is, where is your network? How are you staying connected to people that lift you up, that challenge your thinking, that help you grow? As much as we are stuck at home during this current challenge, there's a huge opportunity to expand your network, as the last speaker spoke about. And I'd really invite you to do that, to make sure that we don't fall into that trap of loneliness. And some of the symptoms that we see within organizational cultures, which I think are super relevant for you as the HR community in India, is a lack of shared purpose. So we can look at mental health on its own as a topic and think, okay, yeah, someone's got anxiety, they've got stress, they're worried about something. But actually, why do people get to that stage? And that's what I'd like us to really explore today. And I believe through lived experience, it's a mix of these things: a lack of shared purpose or meaning, the work that we do not actually filling us up at a soul level. So yes, we're getting paid, But when we get home, we're frustrated with our families, we're upset with our kids, we're not looking forward to going back into work tomorrow. So really making sure that there is some meaning in the work that we do is critical to making sure we don't end up having mental health challenges. Tunnel vision, and this is a real challenge of our time still, as we look to move from what were the old ways to whatever the new ways will be post this crisis, is the majority of organizations still operate with a tunnel vision on the metrics. So KPIs, RFQs, all of the acronyms we can think of, all the abbreviations, but those don't allow us at a heart level to engage with that topic. Some people are numbers people, but even numbers people need to feel meaning and connected to the ultimate purpose and where that organization is going. So I'd invite you to think about, if you're in an organization or yourself are really myopically focused on just numbers at the moment, how much richer could it be, and how might that help others not go down the tunnel, down the depression or anxiety or stress route, if we can take a step back, slow down and look around at what else is going on and not just focus on the metrics. Time is elastic, but we certainly felt like we didn't have any time till 8 weeks ago, didn't we? And I think there's a lot of people I'm speaking to right now that are saying that time was a very real issue for them. Extreme busyness, extreme stress. And I would also invite us to think, actually, what do we want our time to look like as we emerge from this current crisis? Where do we want to spend it? Are we in the right relationships? Are we in the right companies? Have we got the right processes and structures in place within our organizations? We've got the time right now to be really introspective about ourselves, but also challenging of our organizations about how can we be healthier going forward, again, to make sure that we don't have these symptoms within our organizations. Infighting is a popular one. Silos are still very, very evident within many command and control organizations, even if they don't like to say they are command and control. So how do we ensure that we break down the silos? Because in my personal experience, that was part of the reason I burnt myself out, is that I felt trapped in my particular department. And even when I challenged bullying in the workplace, I was told to go away. So it's a really, really important topic for me that we are very mindful of how are we showing up personally, but also how is that system operating? And at what point do we need more courage or more vulnerability to try and step more fully into that conversation? Empathy, such a critical life skill and way of being. This is certainly one of the reasons that many people that I'm aware of end up going down the route of mental health challenges, is they don't feel that they are seen. People cannot empathize with their situation. So who might be working in your organizations right now that has caring responsibilities at home, but you just don't know? Or maybe like myself, someone had a cancer diagnosis and you're completely unaware, but their performance is really, really suffering. But instead of asking, is everything okay? We're laying on even more pressure to that person. So how do we ensure that we build in empathy as part of our organizational design intentionally, so that we can avoid further burnouts and challenges in the workplace? And then the pace of change. I love the previous comment from Jayati, who's speaking about, we are change. And that's partly why I'm writing the book around change is an inside job, because I'm increasingly of the belief, and the people that I've interviewed so far, over 20 of them, consistently have shown that we are change. Human beings are in the moment, human beings. We are continuously change. So to embrace that as part of our organizational design, to build in agility through and not in spite of our people, is a huge step forward to ensuring that we reduce the amount of mental health challenges that we have in the workplace. Just want to do a time check. So in terms of my own personal journey, I've mentioned I wanted to talk about lived experience. So I spoke about being bullied, challenged bullying in the workplace. We've all got a story, but if we're not awake to the stories that we're telling ourselves, my issues were, I used to tell myself I wasn't good enough, that I didn't deserve to get the promotion. Like, the stories that we tell ourselves are so consuming that they can become beliefs and they can own our lives. And that, for me, is the root cause of many of the mental health challenges. Now, I'm speaking from lived experience and not as a practitioner. I'm not a medic, but my belief, and that of many that I surround myself with, is that if we can get to the root cause around our beliefs and the stories we tell ourselves, many people will not need the drugs that they take to deal with depression and ADHD and anxiety, because there's something else going on in the mind normally that is leading to that. And let's get on to some ideas how to really help your teams, you personally as HR practitioners, because you are giving human beings. If you're in the space of the people environment, It's because you care about giving, you care about service, you care about your organizations thriving. But we can be the very people that end up suffering. Think about that oxygen mask analogy, where we think about getting on the aeroplane. It's very used, but I think it's important that we need to wear our own oxygen mask first before we can serve other people to the best of our ability. And to do that, Nilofer Merchant, who's an ex-Apple executive, wrote a book called The Power of Holiness. And this is a fantastic book, and I'd recommend it to anyone that may be interested, because what she speaks about is that we all come from a spot in the world that only we stand. So me, as someone that was bullied, is a white male with privilege that's gone through a cancer diagnosis, is very good at international sales, cares about people. That's my unique holiness. And now what I'm looking to do, and I hope that comes through in our conversation today, is stand in that spot in the world that only I stand to try and serve the greater good. We have all got that opportunity in whatever that looks like for us personally. It might be a stay-at-home mum, we might be a carer, but whatever that looks like, it's really empowering, can help us avoid the mental health challenges that do pop up in work if we know who we are and the difference we want to make in the world. And that links very much to purpose. And it doesn't have to be a big, grandiose purpose, but how are we helping our people, as well as the job that they are paid to do, which is important? How are we creating the space for people to really understand the difference they want to make within the organization? So I love Brené Brown's work. I'm sure that some of you have come across her work. And in her book, Dare to Lead, she speaks about the 2 non-negotiable values that matter more to you than anything else in the world. For me, that is growth and connection. And when I realized this, it really helped me make my decisions in a far more meaningful, purpose-aligned way. And it allows me also to challenge and call out behavior in the work organization that crosses those values. And it doesn't mean that I do that in a negative way. It's in a positive, wow, okay, that's really crossed over my connection value. That person's feeling ostracized or feels like they're bullied. Like, how do I use my values to inform that decision-making? So if you're not clear on your 2 values, may I invite you to think about that? What are the 2 values that mean more than anything to you in the world? And how can you help your teams and your workplaces be clear on that? Because again, when people come from values-based decision-making, you're far less likely to get stuck in your head around decisions that you're making as you move through your life. And it takes courage. So I'd like to also invite you, I continue to do my work around fears. We've always got them. We're undulating humans in the moment. But what fears might be stopping you from stepping into more purpose, more meaning, more connection today? Do you believe that matters? I'm coming from just my lens on the world, my holiness. But I'd really love to invite you to think about what are the things that might be holding you back, maybe at home, at work, in society at large. But what is it that we can do? What can we do in terms of using those fears, the energy around fear, to try and make a difference bigger than ourselves? And again, these are all ideas just to get us thinking about how do we get away from dealing with symptoms of HR professionals at work and give people ideas how to step into their power to avoid that becoming a symptom. Another one of my favorites is Whitney Johnston's work. Whitney Johnston is an innovation specialist based in the US. And she's written some works called Disrupt Yourself and also Build an A-Team. They're fantastic books, highly recommended. I think that certainly suit the HR community. But what I'd like to invite you to think about is disrupting yourself and also helping your colleagues disrupt themselves. And what am I talking about there? You as a community, we as a community of people professionals have got the best all-seeing view of an organization, bar none. We have a better view than the CEO. We have a better view than a financial director. We have a better view than customer service. So my invitation is, how can we use that collective wisdom of this all-seeing eye of an organizational setting to help people design work around the individual and help them continuously disrupt themselves? So what that looks like for me is you might have, within HR, you might have your learning development professional, but that person might really love sales or want to understand the sales process. So how can they do their day job in HR, but you create the space that they're allowed to engage with the sales team as part of their, so really crafting a role that unleashes their unique gifts and interests while still getting the job done. That's my version of disrupt ourselves. How do we get out of the boxes that we've unfortunately found ourselves in over the last 100 years and really unleash our innate gifts? Because again, this for me, 100% is a very powerful way to stop people going down the anxiety, stress and depression route. People feel alive, they feel connected to themselves and others. People do not have mental health challenges generally, in my opinion. And I'd like to also make another invitation here for you. Ross Savage joined me as part of my previous Have Courage Summit, when I actually had Whitney Johnson and 21 other leading thought experts from across the world to talk about courage. You know, how can we step into our courage more meaningfully? And again, this is a root cause for me. The more we step into our courage and own the narrative of our lives, the less likely we are to go down the rabbit hole of mental health challenges. So my invitation here is, whatever path you're on personally, and also those around you, think about, you have two paths. And if you wrote two obituaries, the obituary, it's the last day of your life, what that looks like today, based on the path that you're walking. And then write another obituary for the path that you want to be remembered for when your time is finally up on this planet. And then you can actually look at those two pieces of paper and go, wow, okay, some of that I like, but I want to be going much more in that direction. So what am I now going to do for myself to try and step more towards that path, so that I end up making the biggest possible contribution? Just something to think about. And there's my obituary on the right-hand side there. And that's great. So I'm talking about individuals. Now, what I'd like to share with you is there's a very real business benefit of doing this. So within my work organization where I currently work, between 2015 and 2018, I led a people-centered organizational change. And then nothing else changed. It was the same supplier base, same macro environment, and the same team. Nothing changed, no influence of mergers and acquisition. And we increased sales by 6 million and gross margin by 1.5 million between 2015 and 2018 by just shifting our culture intentionally from a more fear-based culture of whose fault is it, blame, to how do we collectively remove the roadblocks and co-create how we want to live and be as a team while still doing the job that needs to be done. So there are financial outcomes of benefit for us leading with heart and connection and humanity. And that experiment is now being replicated to the 400 million pharmaceutical business group within my work organization. Some of the things that we introduce, just to bring this to life for you a little bit as HR professionals, you can see we really intentionally looked at our mindset, increasing conversations and workshops around vulnerability, self-awareness, courage, identifying core values for the team, setting up peer-to-peer mentoring spaces, setting up hackathons where we allowed people to come together and co-create what the future should look like. You know, remote working, before we had the current situation, we were actually saying, look, take more time. I trust you. You know the job that needs to be done. We trust you to get on and do the job. And we started using Slack and other technologies like that as well. So, and again, I'm happy if this is raising any interest for anybody at all in the Indian HR community. I'm happy to share any of the other learnings that we had and some of the challenges as we went through this journey, should that be helpful. And I think I'd like to talk about change again. So there's a belief in society, and this was my belief until a couple of years ago, that we have to seek permission from the top board before we can start change. This success happened because we self-managed, we self-organized as part of the sales team. We did not ask for permission. We know our work. We know what works best. We know what's working well, what's not working well, and what we can improve. So we ran the experiment. And as Accenture Strategies 2015 research showed, something like 80% of change, when it's effective, works from the bottom or the middle out. 70% of change that comes purely top down fails, as per McKinsey's results. So it really is the time for us to really design our work around our humans while still getting the job done, because the evidence is overwhelming. And I would assert, if we come at this lens through a deeply human-centered design of our work, mental health will reduce categorically. So the book's going to be coming out soon as we look to wrap up. Change is an inside job. And I'm being very vulnerable. I'm fully aware as a white male of my privilege, and that is something I intentionally talk about as part of this book, Change is an Inside Job. We're talking about consciousness, our beliefs, the stories we tell ourselves, how we need to engage with our emotions, people-centered organizational design. And this is an important point I want to talk to about the community again, is how do you design roles around your people rather than squeezing your humans into a box job description? Because that is where a lot of the pressure for mental health comes from, is where people think that they cannot be themselves. And the last couple of things I'd like to talk about, you may be aware of the Google Project Aristotle and Oxygen work. If you're not, I strongly recommend that you look at this. It's all open source, completely free online. You'll find it, Rework, I believe, is the organization. What's really important to note here, the extensive research of their highest performing teams, only at number 8 out of the top 8 behaviors was a technical. The first 7 were all human. Be a good coach, be a good communicator, help your employees with career development. This comes from Google. And I know we laud Google quite a lot, but I think this research is important. And it's also been shared in psychological safety. So I actually had Amy Edmondson on episode 29 of the Value Through Vulnerability podcast. And we had an extensive conversation about the importance of psychological safety. And that came up in Google's research as the #1 critical determinant for people to show up and make a contribution. So if your organizations do not allow people to challenge the status quo safely, to innovate, to bring their ideas and their unique gifts to your organizational structure, people will burn out. People will get depressed. People will get anxious. But my question, my challenge to this is, that's because they don't feel in themselves that they are part and that they belong to your organization. So the psychological safety in and of itself isn't causing them to feel that way, but inside their own thinking and their belief system, they will feel internally that they don't belong. So really do think intentionally about psychological safety. So some of the ways you can unleash these gifts, how to design your organization, is slow down. We have no better opportunity than this COVID crisis to maintain running at 30, 40, 50 miles an hour, and don't allow ourselves to get stuck back at 100 miles an hour again, because that will lead to more burnout and more depression. Let's be courageous. Every one of you that's kindly joining me now has got unique, innovative gifts. If you're not bringing them to the fore, be courageous and just speak about those a bit more. Tell people what you believe in, what matters to you, and the difference you want to make bigger than yourself. Use a growth mindset. The opportunity that sits within all of us right now, the HR community and beyond, belief systems have been shattered overnight the last 5 weeks. Look at remote working. What a great example. In my own work organization, HR, customer service, finance were not allowed to work from home because of an outdated belief of the CEO. Today, 100% of our colleagues are working from home, and most of them don't want to be fully back in the office. Like, this is game-changing stuff happening right now. So let's be open to this and let's embrace it. Listening is a superpower of our time. How much voice do your people really have to contribute to the ongoing development of their roles, but also the organization at large? And this is beyond feedback surveys. This is beyond annual surveys. Does their voice matter, and how do they help co-create the future within your organization? Run experiments, critical, don't ask for permission, and network. I love the previous conversation around get out into your network. I cannot recommend that enough, not only to avoid going down sort of loneliness and worry about mental health, but my network has expanded exponentially the last 2 years by just reaching out to people on LinkedIn, as some of you did over the last couple of days, so thank you for that. And just saying, look, have you got 20 minutes? I'd love to get to know you. What are you up to? What are you working on? Can I try and connect you? Can I let you know about a resource I've read? With actually meeting other people using this technology without any ulterior motive apart from human connection is wonderful, it's transformational, and I really urge you all to step into that more fully. And as I wrap up, link to vulnerability. This is Gary Ridge, CEO of the WD-40 company. You may know the blue can with the little red lid. I think you have that in India as well. It's the grease company. He told me on episode 50 of the Value Through Vulnerability podcast, the 3 most important words that I learned were I don't know. And the challenge we have in HR and in the people sphere is we are still dealing with an awful lot of fear of senior leaders and C-suites who are not willing to say, I don't know. And I believe that our role to ensure that we do take down these high mental health statistics that we see at the moment is to design our organizations around our people, to start leading with heart as well as our head, and to coach our senior leaders to be able to say these 3 words far more often than they do at the moment. So the evidence is out there. The future of jobs evidence from World Economic Forum. We're moving to more humanistic skills. And my final comment, Maya Angelou. I almost get a tear every time I read this. I've learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So summary message there, clarify your 2 core values that are non-negotiable. Become aware of the stories that you're telling yourself. review and clarify your unique spot in the world that only you stand. Write 2 obituaries, one for the path you're on and one for the one you desire to be on, if it's different. Surround yourself and offer value to connections and people that advance and challenge your thinking. Get out the echo chamber whilst giving you energy. And practice going first with vulnerability and courage. I can assure you the results are deeply impactful. And I believe that wraps us up. So I really hope that's offered some value to you. And thank you so much for listening to me today.
Thank you, Gary. I think we have a question from Natasha on the video. Natasha?
Yes. Hi, Gary. Finally, we meet.
Hi, Natasha. Lovely to see you. How are you?
How have you been? I'm so sorry for the technical glitch that happened in the morning. It was just not anticipated at all.
You've done a great job, all of you. It's fantastic being with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Gary, I have a question here. So, in India, people are still new to the concept of mental health. And organizations which are more globally inclined and aligned are the ones who are taking care of it. But then the Indian organizations as such do not really have adapted to the whole concept. So what is your recommendation or suggestion for those organizations or the HR practitioners to adapt that whole space of mental health and make it more acceptable in such workplaces?
That's a really great question, Natasha. My invitation would be to come back to that values conversation. So I can imagine that if it's a newer paradigm or a newer way of being that's being introduced to the local community, maybe try and create some focus groups around values. So like, what matters to you as a CEO? What matters to you as the HR director? So you can use that language. You don't even have to say values. Think about the language that matters to the senior leader. So I think this is a really important point. We need to meet people where they're at. So those senior leaders may be talking about metrics and numbers. So maybe come to them with the numbers I shared earlier. So actually there's these mental health statistics that are evidencing problems. I'd like us to be proactive, CEO, and make sure we don't contribute to these problems. How about we have a conversation about what matters to each of us in this organization? Let's run some workshops on what we value. And by getting the senior leaders involved in that process, that could be a really nice catalyst to open that conversation more widely.
Awesome. I have another question for you. Considering that we have a diversity challenge right now in India corporate, with women stepping back in their careers and taking a break, some of the organizations have started with return to work. But what we see is that when they come back to work, there is a lot of stress, to adapt back to the corporate life, again, to manage the family commitments. And then, of course, a lot of them go through their midlife crisis and problems. So again, how do organizations see dealing with this more effectively? While we do have employee assistance programs and we have the health technology platforms right now, connecting them to various psychiatrists and psychologists for counseling, I think there's something more that these organizations can do. And that's what we would love to hear from you.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. Because again, what you're speaking to there for me, Natasha, is the symptoms. So, okay, let's design some tech, or let's give people a program. Like, it's almost a little bit outside. It's like, okay, yeah, if we've got a problem, let's outsource it to somebody else, rather than saying, actually, we're the organization. These people are part of our system. So it really going to be quite challenging, Natasha. It's got to come back to. It is going to be a challenge because I'm dealing with it now in my own organization. We've got to move the language from people being an asset and a human capital to human beings. Okay. So to answer your question, practically, what we can do, what you can do as a HR community is start to look at the roles. Okay. So you've probably got a lot of job descriptions at the moment. So this is what we expect the person to do. The human needs to tick those boxes. Rather than the role needs this to happen, these 5 or 6 key actions or activities, and we'll then allow the space around that to be filled by the human. So that will actually help more women coming back into work, because then you would be looking at a situation where a man or a woman, or however someone identifies, could cover the role in the absence while the woman's on maternity. And when she comes back, the role is still the same. Yeah, and it's how we've got to intentionally design the role so it's got more flexibility and get away. We've got to break away from these tight job descriptions, because that's why you have the challenges that you have, is that people are recruiting into narrow boxes. So we're trying to squeeze humanity into a box rather than create this big circle of a job role that has a core function to be done. There's a job to be done, but that's only like 30% of the intention. There's 70% of the human that makes the difference in that role.
Awesome. I have another question for you. Why don't you talk something more about your book? I'm really excited about this, and it seems to be a very interesting topic that you'll be touching upon. So maybe a bit of insight in terms of what it's all about. How are you looking at engaging your audience with that book, and what is the key takeaway that you are trying to emphasize at the end of the day?
Yeah, I think I've only woken up to my privilege over the last 2 years. When we talk privilege, we're not trying to go to like the, white male and supremacy. I'm not going that route. What I'm talking about is I've become aware that I have less socialized barriers than other people in minorities, etc. So my role with the book, Natasha, to answer your question, is to role model vulnerability. It's what my podcast is called. It's how I lead myself increasingly in life. So I want to put the book out there as a white male that talks about the need for us to be aware of our privilege, that we are all part of one interconnected system, that we do need to design work around our people and not in spite of them. So in essence, what it is, it's a book about lived experience. So I talk about my journey of bullying, self-harm, burning myself out. So I talk about all of that as a way to show that it's okay to talk about these things. Then I talk about privilege and how that shows up in the workplace, but also as individuals. And then I get into change. So get into the actual change process. So what I've actually done is I've enrolled 30 very kind human beings who have agreed to be primary research candidates for me. And so what I'm going to do is actually use their insights alongside my lived experience to bring the story to life. Because again, I'm going to be quite challenging, Natasha, you'll get used to me. But we can't live anymore with the big consultancy idea that the model fits the organization and that you must fit our model. Like, it just doesn't work anymore. And we really need to allow the hearts as well as the minds of our people to come to the fore. And I believe that until we do the inner work, that we realize that change is an inside job individually, but then also within our own organization, we're going to continue to have 70% failure rate of all change globally. And the ironic thing is, it's the very same consultancies that pay for the research to tell us that their stuff isn't working. So it's a really bizarre paradigm. And I'm not anti those consultancies. I just want them to become more heart-led and more human in what they're bringing to the world. So the whole premise of the book is we are accountable. We've got a responsibility to show up fully, to individually and collectively. And what I'm also introducing off the back of that towards the end of the book is some ideas around how to bring that to life. So around people-centered organizational design, challenging our belief structures. So it's really aimed at the individual who wants to look at their personal development journey, but also individuals that work within organizations that might want to leverage their humanity for good.
Awesome. That sounds really, really interesting. I'll be the first one to buy your book.
Very kind. Very kind.
So we have Jyoti with us, and she has a question for you.
Wonderful.
Hi, Gary. Just wondering, when we are looking at a lot of our processes as an organization and global organizations, we tend to roll a process out globally, though we, of course, try and customize it individually to some extent, or maybe have local nuances built in. But what's the extent of local culture? What's the extent of influence of local culture on concepts around mental health? Because the way one responds to mental health is also a lot dependent on how culturally you've been brought up to respond to it. Mm-hmm. And how do we as HR professionals in large multinational organizations take care of some of these aspects? So are there ways we could factor these around? Are there thoughts that you have on this space?
Such powerful questions. Jyoti, thank you so much for that. If I think about my own work organization, which is also a global 3.5 billion turnover corporate, we haven't done it well, to be honest. And we've done the outsourcing to employee programs, and it's been a failure, to be honest, in many ways, because we haven't taken the accountability at a local level. So to answer your question, all culture is local. So even if we are part of a global organization, you've got the local Indian operation, the US operation, the British operation. So it's not a cookie cutter approach. It has to be locally led. And I think our organization, I'm not sure about yours, but ours is decentralized. So we actually have a matrix structure So we have a global corporate headquarters in one region, and then you have the matrix structure that goes out globally across the different regions. So I think ideally you're going to have a mandate from the top. That would be helpful to say mental health matters, particularly if you're in a developing region where it isn't so common. I think that's a very important leverage point if you can get that, but I wouldn't wait for that either. Okay, so I think what's important is the co-creation part. So who better to tell you about what the mental health strategy should be on a local basis than the people that you actually work with and for and who you serve. And I think that's part of the solution, is that there is no magic wand to wave around mental health. Like, it's about creating that psychologically safe space that people can say, I'm struggling. Like, that's the number one recommendation I would make is it safe or not for someone to say, I'm struggling. Like, and from there you can start to build out your programs and your focus groups and your peer-to-peer support that you might have within the organization. But if it isn't safe to say I'm struggling, that's your cultural issue. Like, we've got to start there around safety.
So true to put that across, but indeed psychological safety is very important and often underrated factor, but I think it makes a lot of difference to a lot of these change processes that we talk about. Thanks, Gary. Thanks for your...
Thank you for the question.
Awesome.
Gary, hi, this is Nidhi here.
Sorry, Nidhi.
Yes, I have a question.
Sure, please.
Oh, we have a participant question?
I thought Anil had a question. It's okay. Continue. Maybe you can take it up from there.
No, what? Okay, then I think Anil gets the way first. Come on, Anil, you're a guest. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was on mute. Hi, Gary. How are you? Sorry, I had a question. So, how do you think mental health and data analytics can work together? I mean, do you see any tech platforms coming up yet?
That's a really good question, Anil, and I would say no, not anything, not outside of our sort of Calm and Breathes and the sort of meditation apps. I've not seen anything from a HR, sort of a HR designed analytic platform linked to mental health. I think it's a really, really great question. I think but I would also go a step further and say that even when that technology does come in, it can't and shouldn't replace the human conversation. And I think that's the danger with technology. And I know how incredibly amazing India is in terms of software engineers and development. It's incredible how advanced you all are in that agenda. But I think we need to be very mindful of why, as the human, and I think Jyoti spoke on this as well, is that, human beings design tech to serve humans. We should be very careful that we don't accidentally and innocently bring in tech to cover a human challenge and they go, okay, that's done, great. So I think it's a great question. I don't know any of the technology, and I just wanted to put that little bit of caution out just in case.
All right. Thanks, Gary.
Thank you for the question.
Great. So I guess, Natasha, I'll go then. Gary, I just have a question, and I'm going to, segue from both what Jyoti said and what Anil was asking. There was this adage going around the other day saying that if you can't go out, because we're all quarantined within our homes, if you can't go out, go in. So, encouraging us to sort of look within, channelize our own prowess, probably pretty much in line with what you were asking us to do. So, channelize the power of ourselves. However, as a culture, as Jyoti was mentioning a little while ago, we are a very collectivistic culture. So as a culture, Indians love being with people. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're seeing alarming rates being reported from the Indian Psychiatric Society about depreciation and mental health. Is there any way or anything that you would advise our audience this afternoon, some ways that they can connect while, keeping the sense of self alive? How can they go back to their communities in a virtual manner?
That's a really lovely question. And I think I'd come back to that reflection really around the intentionality. Like, what's the why behind connecting with someone? So you've got your immediate, say you've got your social groups, then you've got your work colleagues, and then you've got this incredible global network. People like me, people like you, that I'm sure that if someone came to us and said, look, actually, I'd just like to have a conversation or share some ideas. Like, I just want to really share my experience. I think you'd be amazed how many people go yes to that right now. Like, the aperture the mind is so open to so many people right now that I'd probably get quite creative, to be honest. Nidhi, around, maybe do that little bit of introspection around, okay, we are locked down. I do miss being around people in physically, and trust me, I'm missing hugging people like mad at the moment. It's like I'm literally stuck at home. It's horrible. But there is a way, I believe, is like if we think about what do I want to learn and how do I want to serve between now and us actually getting back in person, and that might help people think about, okay, I don't actually know anybody that's got disability in my network, or I don't know anybody actually who's black. I don't really have that sort of diversity in my community, in my extended network. I'm going to go and reach out to some people on LinkedIn and just try and get to know them. Like, just some of those sort of creative ideas might be one way to at least bridge that gap, Nidhi, potentially.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. I think that will really help.
Awesome. So I think, Gary, we call it a wrap. Very, 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 very grateful and immense gratitude to all the panelists out here. Very, very insightful discussions that we had. Gary, thank you so much for taking our time right from UK to join the India audience here today. Really appreciate it. So we are looking forward to curating more sessions for India. This is just a start. And we are sincerely apologetic for the technical glitch that happened today. We'll be more careful. So continue to tune in. We may just have Gary again with us in coming months with something different to share once his book is out. And we may have Anil again and Jyoti again discussing something different post-lockdown in terms of how organizations are coping up with their workforce challenges and their business challenges. You've been a great audience. Thank you so much all. We'll stay connected. We'll be sending out a survey link latest by tomorrow. And we will look forward to have your inputs to help us curate the coming up sessions more diligently. Anything from the panelists?
Thank you so much, Natasha, for organizing this. Very, very interactive, very important. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Great session. Nice to meet you all. Thanks very much for the opportunity. Have a great weekend, everyone.
You too. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe and have a great weekend.